Hi, I'm Casey Wei, the short forum programmer, here today with Devyn Chaung and her short film Strawberry Shortcake. We talk about all things related to the film and more, including our favorite films, films we liked, films we didn't like, films we watched on the plane that we shouldn't have. So tune in. Welcome to the VIFF Podcast. This is your chance to get the inside track from the people behind the films you love and the films you're about to discover. This podcast was recorded on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations during the 43rd edition of the Vancouver International Film Festival. My name is Casey Wei, and I'm the short forum programmer, here today with director Devyn Chaung. Devyn's short film, Strawberry Shortcake, plays in Program 5 of the short forum tonight. And how do I even describe the plot? Well, in our program guide, I teased out the description. A teenage girl named Lolo falls into a Freudian fantasy with her mother. And I'm really looking forward to unpacking all of that. Hi, Devyn. Thanks for being with us today.
Hi, Casey. Thank you for inviting me.
Before we get into it, I'm curious, how did you come into filmmaking? I read in your artist bio that you've had many professions before actually becoming a filmmaker.
Right. So I've always been in love with films since I was young. I came to boarding school, to East Coast boarding school when I was young, and I had a lot of time, and it felt very isolated. So I really watched a lot of films in high school, but I never thought it was something that I could do. It felt so unreachable at the time. So in college, I studied finance, and I did investment banking after that, which is very different. And to be honest, I kind of hated it. So I took a little break and went to New York, and somehow I got into cooking. And so I ended up, cooking in a really nice kitchen. And then, but unfortunately, COVID hit, so I went back home to Taiwan, which I haven't been in a long time. I would spend a little time there, but not living there extensively. And that's kind of when I met some people in the film industry there. And I would just talk about movies a lot with them, and they really encouraged me to write my own short. So I did, and we somehow found a really cheap way to make it. And so it was a group of friends, and then we had a GoPro, we had iPhones, and we had a small Sony camera, and we just made my short. And and that experience was really, really exhilarating and fun for me. And so I was like, oh, maybe I should do this for real. And so I used that short to apply to film school in the States. And so now I go to film school. I'm still in film school right now.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. So Strawberry Shortcake is like a quote unquote student project.
Yes. It's the project I made after my first year in film school.
What was your first short called?
It's called Mom If I Were a Vampire.
Okay.
And so basically I really want to tell my coming out story, but we've seen a lot of coming out stories, and I wanted to make it in a different way that feels more like me. And I really love genre films, so I kind of used that horror framework and to tell something that is very personal. Yeah.
Well, for me, Program 5 tonight, which your film is in, is our genre program, and it's kind of the program where everything's a bit weird, deranged, unhinged, but in the best way. And I have to say, I usually don't do this, but I kind of conceptualized the program after watching Strawberry Shortcake, because it was just a film I knew I wanted to include, because it was just so out there. And it took me back to when I was younger, and I was always kind of looking for that extreme kind of cinema. How would you describe the film in your own words?
Yeah, this is a tough one. A lot of people ask me that, but basically I think it's about a girl who really yearns to be seen and loved by the mother, but she fails, and the pain and the misery and the horror she has to endure for searching for that kind of connection.
Wow, that's heavy. There's a very strong psychoanalytic kind of angle to the film. Is that something you've always been interested in too?
Yeah, so I've been fascinated by the concept of the Freudian Oedipal complex. And I think it's interesting because when you hear about this, it's always about the son and the mother, right? The son being in love with the mother and then killing the father. So I kind of was wondering, so what if it's a daughter and mother? That's something that hasn't been explored. What would that be called even? And I actually took a class at Columbia, and I asked the instructors, like, what would that be called? And then like, why hasn't that been explored? And they don't have a great answer for it.
Yeah.
So this is something I thought was very interesting for me to explore in a narrative form.
Yeah, because I'm kind of familiar with the Oedipal complex and kind of familiar with the Electra complex, but it's not the same thing.
Yeah, because Electra will be daughter and father.
Yeah. But like through the mother. And that's also really interesting to me. Like the kind of the subtext of the film is like the missing father figure. Like we see it in the photograph, the black and white photograph, where it looks like I can't tell, but is it the mom kind of like styled as a man? Okay, so there's that element, and there's this family photo where the father's image is just like burned out.
Right.
So underneath this this plot of the mother and daughter, which is super wild. We'll get into that later. There's this like missing father figure. Did that kind of did you think about that father figure like when you were writing the script?
Yes. So to me, it's about the mother is replacing that father. It's kind of, she's embodying both the dichotomy of the feminine and the masculine. And I wanted to explore how that has an effect on Lolo and the psyche behind, being raised in that kind of environment where the mother has to be both the mother and the father.
Yeah. So maybe I can just describe the plot a little bit. Like it's the mother's birthday, or is it Lolo's birthday?
It's the mother's
birthday, and Lolo has a strawberry shortcake in the fridge, hence the title of the film, for her mom. And then, like it's very normal at first, and then suddenly things get kind of weird because it seems like they're flirting with each other. And then it transitions into a very erotic scene with the strawberry shortcake and the mother and daughter. And then it kind of, there's this whole kind of like pleasure, fantasy, repulsion kind of like stage of the film, and that's followed by a really, really dark ending, which is like a child caring for like a dying parent. And that arc is so intense. I'm just curious, like how did you come up with that narrative arc?
So it actually came to me in the form of a dream, which is not surprising, but I have like really crazy dreams and I always write them down, and a lot of my work comes from my dream. And but this one particularly, it came from the tatami room came first to me, and the space came first to me. But that was actually just when I was growing up. I'm from Taiwan, and my childhood home had a tatami room in it, and it was always kind of like really haunting and like scary to me. Like I would, get up in the middle of the night trying to go to the bathroom. I pass by, it's always empty. And then my mom and grandma had these like Japanese no masks. Those like scary the white lady masks in there, and then like these like really old like antique samurai armors in it, and then they were always so scary to me. So to me, that space was very haunting, and just and then like one night it was like a few years ago, I had a dream about that space, and then just all my memories came flooding back of all my childhood. And so this, I know it sounds crazy, but like a lot of the narrative is actually very personal. And so I wanted to put a story in that room, and that's kind of how it came about.
It doesn't sound super crazy. I mean, the film is like super crazy, but like where it comes from, like the character of Lolo is really kind of like I can relate to it because it's like a young Asian girl, like kind of in school, and I can just tell that there's a lot of pressure in her life, just being a student, living, in a home with like a single mom, and just kind of not having the father figure around. Like, so there's that element that feels very like rooted in like the real world, and then there's this whole kind of dream world that kind of just like kind of spreads out. But like what really worked for me in the film was just how precise and exact and beautiful the set design was, because I think if the set design wasn't so considered, like the intention could be lost a little bit. I'm curious, could you talk about the set design a bit?
So I think it feels so precise because I actually shot in my grandma's home, and then that tatami room belonged to her, and it's almost the exact same copy of what we had. And when my childhood home was still around, unfortunately it's no longer there, but so I think that element really helped. And also it feels very precise, I think, because almost all the props in the short came from my mom. So my mom is an extreme hoarder. So if there's that show in Taiwan, she would be on it, like no question about it. And so she has all these like really like she would have all these like really nice stuff and also all these junks. And so before I was gonna make the film, my production designer Hickey Chen, who's amazing, and I'm so thankful to have her. And she and I went to my mom's, garage and then her storage rooms, and we just like kind of picked out all these things. And poor Hickey, she had like every time she has to take something from my mom would be there. And then she has all these stories that she would tell about each item. So Hickey had to be there for hours, just like listen to my mom telling her about every like tiny stories about every single thing that she wanted to borrow. But I think because of that, even the clothing, some of them were from my mom. So it's very personal and very precise in that way.
Yeah. Well, I guess Hickey just got to know you and your family a lot through the production.
Bless that woman. Yeah, she's going to be joining me on the second screening.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Curious, how has your mom seen the film?
Nope.
Okay.
And I hope she doesn't see it.
Yeah, that's totally understandable.
And it's funny because she didn't even ask me what I'm filming. She's just like, oh, you're filming? Okay, what do you want?
Yeah, it's like an art project.
Right.
Yeah, innocent art project.
But to me, it's kind of strange that she never asked. She also didn't see my first film, which is also a mother-daughter story. So, people say I have very intense mommy issues. So, but she hasn't seen anything.
At some point, do you think you'll want her to see something that you've made?
Well, I'm trying to develop this into a feature, and I actually have a feature script for it already. And so I think when the feature comes out, she's probably gonna see it. Yeah.
How was it like working with the actors for this film?
Yeah, that was a really interesting experience. So I worked with the mom in my first short.
Okay.
And that was kind of when, before film school, I didn't know anything about filmmaking. And working with her and so she's kind of like a known actress. And, she's been working in the industry for a long time in Taiwan. And it was kind of difficult to work with her at first for my first film. But in this film, even though I feel like it was much more challenging, like there were so many more challenging scenes to direct, but I felt actually more comfortable with her. I think it's because we actually built a lot of trust after the first film. And she was willing to show a lot and do a lot for the film this time. And then the younger actress, she's a newer actress, and she's never done any intimate scenes before. So that intimacy, the intimate scene was very difficult and challenging to direct for her. But thankfully, I had a really great intimacy coordinator who, like in Taiwan, it's not really a thing yet, but then because it's part of the Columbia project, we were required to have an intimacy coordinator. And I asked my actress from the last film I worked on to be my intimacy coordinator. And so we really I think having her there, we really created a space where it felt very safe for the both actors, because she's also an actress, and then she was on their side. And I think having that, and then we choreographed a lot, rehearsed a lot, so we made sure everybody was comfortable. And when we actually shot, it only took two takes basically.
Oh, that's great.
And and then they really went like above and beyond, like more than what I imagined. So I was really, really thankful for that experience.
How many strawberry shortcakes did you have to make for the production?
18.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Did you make them yourself?
No, I had a friend who's a baker, and she helped it. Yeah.
Yeah, the intimacy scene, it's not just like a mother and daughter being intimate. There's cake, there's a prosthetic penis, there's a video camera. So there's a many elements to it that kind of make it freakier than your average like love scene.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And the funny thing is that the camcorder footage is actually recorded by the mother.
Oh wow.
Yeah, she was actually recording it while we're filming the take. So yeah.
Did you have to like explain the motivations for the characters much to the actors? Because yeah,
we spend a lot of time just discussing, because I think it was kind of hard for like just by reading the script was only 6 pages.
Oh, okay.
And just by reading the script, it was kind of hard for people to really understand at first, and I had to like really get into the backstories of like each character. And that's also why after I made the short, I was able to write the feature very quickly, because as I was rehearsing with them and just we were building out the characters together, and I realized it's a much bigger story, and then both of them has such a like rich backstory that it belongs in a feature.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to see the feature version of this. Are you working with the same actors for the feature?
I'm hoping, yeah.
And is this going to be like something you do while you're in school, like as a grad project, or do you think it's going to like extend past that time?
Yeah, I think it's going to be something, hopefully my first feature, and I'm graduating in a year, so and hopefully after that, yeah.
Wow, cool. That's amazing. This like I know I haven't seen anything quite like Strawberry Shortcake, and I haven't been doing this job for that long, but in 3 years this is the most. I mean, it's such a silly term, but one of the previewers saw it and their comment was like, this might be too avant-garde for VIFF audiences. And I'm like, okay, God, I got to put this one in. So yeah, it's such a unique and just like emotionally effective film. So thank you for, I don't know, bringing your mommy issues into the filmmaking format.
Yeah, I was a little bit nervous too, because it feels like a lot of people will have questions, and but then it was something I just really wanted to make. It was exciting to make, and I think I like some of the scenes is exactly how I imagined, like exactly how I dreamt it. So I think I really had a great crew that I was so thankful that they were able to help me realize my vision, and I think everybody was so like on the same page, and it felt just like magical. Like, yeah, it really affirmed my experience as a filmmaker.
That's amazing. Like, throughout this process, did you have like folks like reading the script as you were developing it to give you feedback, or was it mostly kind of like, because the script is 6 pages, you kind of just knew all the way like what your vision was and didn't need too much feedback? Or
yeah, so I actually brought this idea into the classrooms with to get feedbacks from my professors and cohorts. And at first, it was actually even more contained. It was all in the tatami room.
Okay.
And I was like, I went into the room, was like, no, like I know what I'm doing, like I know you probably won't understand, like I really needed to be like this contained. But then as we like discussed more, I realized actually I think it makes a little more sense to expand it a little bit, just to give people some more anchors. And so I was thankful through that process. So the first year of film school kind of developed that script a little more too. And I think in looking back, that was a good decision. Yeah.
Like for you, do you have any films that served as like reference points or like inspiration for your work?
Yeah, so I love the short stories by Ryu Murakami.
Oh, yeah.
And he has a collection of short stories called Tokyo Decadence. And I think it's a big inspiration for me. And so he also did the screenplay for this film called Audition. And I love that film, and I love that filmmaker, and so Takeshi Miki, and so that's a big inspiration for me. I just love how extreme and grotesque, like everything gets like in his stories, but it's like under such like repressed and subtle like Japanese like society, and I find that like dichotomy very fascinating, and so I like I said, I'm from Taiwan, and I've watched a lot of Japanese films growing up too, and so that's a big influence. So another film that's a big influence for me is Cure, by Kurosawa, and I think visually that's a big reference point for us. And thematically, another film is A Funeral Parade of Roses. It's very dear to my heart. And in terms of like just just like the mood and vibe. I just love David Lynch. So and the Mulholland Drive, it's a big reference.
Oh my gosh, you just like listed like a lot of my favorite films, like Takashi Miike's films. Like actually watching your film, the first film I thought about was Visitor Q.
Oh yeah. I also love that.
Yeah, it's totally disturbed me so much when I was like 18. But just like that's the only other film where I can think of where I'm like where like the mother is so abject in such a just like surprising and unexpected way. So that totally makes sense with your aesthetic. Yeah. The audition was really, really good too. Anyway, that's just like, it's cool that like these references kind of resulted in it. Because like I can see it in your film, which is really interesting.
Yeah. And also, in terms of Taiwanese films, I also love this film by Tsai Ming-liang called The River.
I haven't seen that one. Okay.
Yeah, and so it's kind of just because I'm like Taiwanese and also American, and I wanted to see like a Taiwanese film that I haven't seen, and I feel like people have an idea of what Taiwanese films look like. And then a lot of it's based on that Taiwanese new wave vibe. Yeah. But I feel like we're in the new generation. We're a new generation of Taiwanese filmmaker, and I also have a lot of like different influences, from the West. And I wanted just to make something that I personally haven't seen.
Yeah. Get freaky.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really great. Like, because I'm also Chinese, like from like mainland China, but just like kind of how you're talking about your mom as like as a hoarder. I'm like, yes, that is my mother. Or how my parents, like whenever I do anything artistic, they're not interested. They're just kind of like, oh yeah, she's just doing her whatever it is, and we'll support it. But it's never like an engaged like, can I see what you're doing, or curious like how I'm involved in what you're doing. So that's really interesting. It's kind of like it gives you agency, like to, I don't know, like to use your family in a way that it's about them, but like they don't really, there's like no accountability almost. It's kind of like freedom or something to work with your family when they don't care.
Yeah, it's interesting. I personally think, I don't know if it's that she doesn't care or she's scared. Like I personally think, because recently, because we've always had a really difficult relationship. It's like she's very disapproving of my sexuality. And even now she still doesn't really, like, we don't talk about it, and so we've had like a very difficult relationship since I've been away since I was 12, and I basically had to parent myself. And recently I've asked her to see if she could, get into therapy with me, and then maybe we could like open up the dialogue. And then she was like, no, I have no problems. You're the one with problems, so you go. So I think it's a form of just escape, or just like they don't want to face it. Yeah, and I think that's just a certain generation that's just kind of built that way, and there are all these like trauma that's just hidden underneath it. And I think that this is what my film is also about. It's all about these like generational trauma that keeps on passing. It's a loop. It's a cycle. It's unbreakable. It's like a bond and a chain that it's just infinite. And that's why the film is structured like a loop too.
Yeah, that's what I find really interesting about like psychoanalysis, kind of like in general, where like the obvious thing is like, oh, the son wants to have sex with the mother, or like the daughter, the father, but it's never about that. It's always about all these other things that are just kind of coming through this very kind of like base understanding of like desire or something. And I'm really curious about the ending, because there's the official ending and then there's the ending in the credits where it almost seems like it was all a dream. Can you talk about that choice to include the ending in the credits?
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually so curious to what people would think, and I'm like so curious to the audience's reading to it. And but for me, like I said, it's a loop, and it kind of doesn't matter which part is dream, which part is reality. I mean, there are parts that's real and there are parts that's dream, and I think it's really fun for me to see how people interpret it and then what they take away from it. And so I'm not gonna say like exactly which part is the dream, which part is, but I think it's really fascinating for me to see how, because I designed the scene so that everything could be porous, and then they're all kind of like connected, and then just bleeds into each other, and so yeah, it's interesting for me.
Right, I'm like, okay, so is it a dream, or is it like just Groundhog Day, like the worst Groundhog Day over and over and over again?
But like I said, I think it's about that unbreakable bond with the mother-daughter. It's like almost like this toxic cycle of like generational trauma that just keeps getting passed on, and it will just keep on happening, you know?
But there's also that sense of just like piety and duty and care, which is very present. There's like love there for sure. And it's so messy. Yeah. Like it's messy, like when they just like mash that cake up.
Yeah, that was hard to clean up. the whole tatami room.
The tatami room.
Yeah, that was difficult to clean up. Yeah.
Also, kind of the focus on the feet. There's like a foot fetish kind of element in it.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was just something that I thought was like visually very interesting for me. And a lot of people came up to me and said, "Oh, do you have a foot fetish?" So I said, "No," but actually, it came to me when I was visiting Kyoto, and I went into this like really small bookshop, and they have all these like fetish magazines, and then I saw an image of someone just like it's a fetish magazine on like people's foot stepping into like different kinds of food, and so I saw one with like a foot and crushing a cake, and I was so fascinated by that image, and I just kept on remembering that, and so I guess kind of that's also how this story really started too. Besides that tatami space, it's also that image that just kind of got stuck in my head, and and I think it's so interesting how like, you know, a whole story forms by just looking at a picture. That's very powerful. Yeah.
And also, like I really like the foot stuff. I don't have a foot fetish either, but it's always just very it's just really fun to watch, like feet stepping into things. There's whole YouTube videos of just like women in heels stepping into things.
Yeah, when I was researching for this, I watched a bunch of weird stuff. Yeah, so I definitely know there's a whole universe out there, and just like how much people get paid for doing that, it's actually so insane.
Just like, why don't I do that?
And the crazy thing is, my young actress Lolo, she has this phobia of like people looking at her feet. And I don't know how we cast her, and we had to like go through this whole process where I had to like coach her, like, and then she like have her let go of that fear. Like we went to like pedicures together, and then she had to like massage her foot and then like talk to her foot like every day. It was so interesting. But then she really overcame it, so I was so proud of her.
Did she have to look at her feet before? Did she have to look at it like on camera stuff to get comfortable with actually looking at it or something at all?
Yeah, I mean, when we were casting, we had to also cast the foot, and then but she was like. At first, she was like really reluctant, and at first she didn't want to do the role because she didn't want to show her foot. Like she was comfortable with showing all these different parts of her body, but just not her foot. So it was interesting how this all worked out.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like she was processing some body stuff too with her feet throughout this film.
Yeah, it was it was like taking her through this journey too, and then to her, she actually became Lolo at one point, and then she had to overcome all these fear. Besides the foot, and also doing this super intimate scene with like a much older actress of the same sex, it was a big deal for her.
Yeah, definitely. So aside from feet, there's also the strawberry shortcake. I'm curious why the strawberry shortcake? Why not like a Black Forest cake or a fruit cake or cheesecake?
Right. So for me, I think strawberry shortcake, especially the Japanese kind, it's like very innocent looking. But then at the same time, that red on white, it's also like there's a lot of desire, and then there's like a very to me, it's like lustful side to it, and I think it kind of represents Lolo, where she's like so innocent, but then there's a very sexual side of her,
right.
And then she's like exploring that.
I like that. Like, if you were a cake, what kind of cake would you be?
Lolo will be strawberry shortcake.
Devyn, if you were a cake, what kind of cake would you be?
That's a good question. I don't know if I'll be a cake, but if I was a dessert, I would probably be a pudding or a custard.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, where to go from here? We're talking about food. This is turning into a food conversation now.
What would you be?
That's a really good question. Like, well, my favorite dessert is tiramisu, but I don't know if I would be a tiramisu. I think I'd be like a donut.
Oh.
Like a really big donut.
What kind of donut? What
like apple fritter.
Okay.
I'm just really into apple fritters right now, that's all. This is a question I like to ask all my guests. Is there something about the short film, like the short film format, that's special to you? Like, is there like, because there's like obviously everyone wants to, most filmmakers want to make a feature, but like in the process of that, there's usually making a short first. Is there something throughout making shorts that like you realize you come to love about making shorts?
Yeah, I think everybody grew up watching features. So when we're writing shorts, a lot of time we still have that mindset of like writing features, but then that really doesn't work in the short. So because you have so limited screen time, you really have to focus on the emotions of the characters instead of like, just explaining or having a lot of backstories for the characters. And but what I find really powerful is that so this summer I got an email from this 16-year-old girl who lives in this like small English town, and she wrote me saying that she somehow got a bootleg copy of my first short. Wow. And then she watched it, and then it changed her life, and then she's never felt so seen. And she lives in this like homophobic town, and she's queer and Asian, and then she just was so amazed by how even a feature film was unable to do that for her. And then she saw this in the short format, and then she was able to be moved. And now she wants to be a director.
That's amazing.
And then to me, that was so, like, I cried when I saw that email, because I remember when I was 16 and I was watching all these films, and they kind of saved me and changed my life. And I think I want to be a filmmaker and get into filmmaking because of I want to contribute the same way these my heroes and these filmmakers did to me. And I'm doing that with my first short. So, and I think this really powers me and really just fuels me, and it will keep me going for a long time.
Amazing.
Yeah. So I think even a short can be so powerful, and that's what really excites me about just spending just this short amount of time, but then having a big impact on people. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, now that I think I've got all the questions that I had prepared, did you want to try a fortune cookie question from the popcorn box?
Yeah, sure. Okay. If you had to switch lives with a film character for a day, who would it be? It's really interesting. Switch lives. I like all horror films, so I don't know if I want to switch lives with any one of them. What's a fun? I guess the character in Being John Malkovich might be interesting for me, because I just to see like someone else's world through. I think that would be fun for me.
Oh, that's a good answer.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do another one.
Okay. Another one I was gonna say was Regina George from Mean Girls.
Oh yeah, what
it's
a
also
life.
one of my favorite films. I know it's like tonally very different, but yeah. What's a film you watched as a kid that completely scared you but now seems silly?
Oh, that's perfect for you.
Oh yeah. There was this Thai film that I watched. It's called Art of the Devil, and it's about all these like voodoo stuff and all these like casts and then spell that you can put on people. And I remember watching that film, and I couldn't sleep for a week afterwards. But now looking back, I'm just like, it's not that scary. But I remember being so scared by it. And I actually wrote a pilot in Taiwan that has to do with that. Like, all the dark arts of the dark spells of like in Thailand. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember I watched it when I was a kid, and I had to stop it because it was so scary. But then as an adult watching it all the way through, when they like fight the big spider, and I'm just kind of like, if I just like watched the whole thing as a kid, I would have just been fine. I wouldn't have to have like to sleep, in my mom's bed for like a week after it.
Yeah. I also another film was that I think when I was younger, I watched The Shining. And I had to like pause so many times because I would get so scared, especially every time he's like turning, like when he's on his little bike.
Yeah.
And but it's so scary now.
It's still scary.
It's still scary. Yeah.
That's so funny. The Shining came up earlier in the other podcast I was interviewing, just because it's one of my 2 Christmas films. Every Christmas I watch The Shining and Babe. together.
I see.
Do you have any Christmas film traditions?
Yes, The Thing.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah,
one.
I love John Carpenter. Yeah, and I recently watched. Speaking of like older like films from the 80s, I also love the new Aliens. I thought that was so smart. Like,
Oh, I
the
haven't
way
tried that yet.
I think the way they did it was so smart and interesting, and reminds you a lot of that, original like 80s movies. Yeah, they really brought it back, and also with like a pretty, decent budget. It wasn't like crazy, so I thought that was impressive.
That's on my list for when VIFF is over.
Yeah,
Have you seen Longlegs?
I have.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting because it reminded me a lot tonally of Cure.
Yeah, yeah.
And then so I thought it almost worked for me if it went with like the hypnosis route rather than just like Satan route. But I thought it was very interesting, and also reminded me of A Silence of the Lamb, and in the best ways. So yeah.
I haven't watched it yet, but I watched like a 10-minute, YouTube, like explaining the film and the theories behind it. And it freaked me out so much, even just watching that YouTube. And I used to, when I was younger, watch scary movies all the time. And I had to like push myself to watch more. But for some reason, I don't know, it's like I'm out of practice or something. Like the idea of watching a scary film right now, just like, I'm like, I can't do it. But talking to you, I feel like I need to get back into that part of my like psyche.
Yeah. I think the performance was just amazing by Nicolas Cage. He was perfect for that role. But I don't think it was that scary.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's reassuring.
But to me, I think two of the scariest films I've seen is probably Cure.
Yeah.
And then also this movie, wait, I'm blanking out on this right now. Michael Haneke's Cachet. I thought that scene where he did like that drastic thing, that was so scary, and then that concept behind just surveillance, it's so scary to me.
No, a lot of
like
his
a
films
very
are scary.
In a very different way.
Yeah. Have you seen like are you a Michael Haneke fan?
Yes.
Have you seen I think it's called The Seventh Continent?
I have not.
Okay.
But I've seen his I love Benny's video and Piano Teacher. And then a Piano Teacher is also a big inspiration for me, of course. Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense, the end scene too. It kind of resonates with Cachet. I saw that on a plane. This was before you could watch a lot of plane movies. So I had my laptop. I'm like, I like downloaded these 3 movies. My laptop will have enough battery to watch them. And I watched The Piano Teacher on the plane. It was like the worst decision ever. Just like being trapped, just being like, what just happened? And this woman beside me is just like asleep. I'm just like, oh my God.
I'm just so amazed by how little he did, but then how much you felt, and it just feels so precise.
Yeah. There's a really good documentary on him that played at VIFF a few years ago, and it was like a 10 a.m. screening where it just kind of takes you through like 6 of his films, and then just like watching the narrative arc, reliving the narrative arc of like 6 of his films like in one film was like so intense.
Right.
Yeah,
because my theory is that I think Michael Haneke and Lars von Trier, they're both like really intense misanthrope. They just kind of hate people, right?
Yeah.
But their films are all fascinating to me. Yeah. And also recently Ari Aster too. I'm a big fan. I actually saw him on a date.
Oh really?
Like recently.
Like
it was interesting. Yeah, I wanted to say hi to him because I'm a big fan. I love Beau is Afraid. Yeah. And not surprisingly, because it's also a mommy issue film. And so I wanted to say hi to him, but I was like, oh no, he's on a date. So
yeah. I gotta be respectful of the big director. But I'm sure somebody else interrupted his date. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Devyn, for your time. This was a great episode. Can't wait to see your film on the big screen tonight.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Thank you for programming my show and giving me this opportunity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have been listening to the VIFF Podcast. Thanks to our community broadcast partner, TELUS Story Hive, for their support. If you're enjoying the show, please rate and review the podcast, and be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Visit VIFF.org to learn more about the Vancouver International Film Festival and see what's on at the VIFF Centre year-round.